My name is Nicholas White, and I hold a position most of my neighbors would never suspect. I'm the Chief of State Gaming Enforcement for the Department of Public Safety. To the general public, I'm simply another quiet face in the suburbs. I recently purchased a cozy two-story home in the Chestnut Villas neighborhood to enjoy a calmer lifestyle outside of work. Little did I expect that my unassuming new residence would plunge me into one of the most bizarre undercover operations of my career. As it turned out, the headstrong, overbearing woman who ran our homeowners association, Betty Arledge, though nearly everyone called her Karen behind her back, was using the HOA's community clubhouse to host an illicit gambling operation. What began as a few whispered rumors around card nights and suspicious gatherings morphed into a full-blown illegal casino that targeted senior citizens and even local veterans. Karen believed she was too cunning, too entrenched in HOA politics, for anyone to dare challenge her. She had no idea the quiet neighbor next door, me, was a seasoned gaming enforcement official. This is the story of how I discovered Karen's secret empire, orchestrated an undercover sting with law enforcement allies, and ultimately took down an HOA tyrant who turned a simple clubhouse into her personal casino, caring nothing for the lives she might ruin. I arrived at Chestnut Villas on a balmy spring afternoon. The neighborhood was filled with pastel houses, each carefully regulated by the HOA to maintain a clean, uniform aesthetic. As I unloaded my moving boxes, I noticed a woman dressed in impeccably pressed khakis and a pastel blouse marching up my driveway, clipboard in hand. She had an air of self-importance that was hard to miss, head held high, jaw set, and eyes flicking over every detail of my lawn and exterior paint as though she were grading an exam. "Hello," I said, offering a neighborly smile, though I already suspected this must be the infamous HOA figure I'd heard about. "I'm Betty Arledge," she introduced herself. Most people in the neighborhood address me as Ms. Arledge or Madam Vice President of the HOA, but you can call me Ms. Arledge for short. "Pleasure to meet you, Ms. Arledge. I'm Nicholas White, just moved in." She tapped her pen on her clipboard. "Yes, I have your file. We keep thorough records on all new homeowners. I trust you've read our community guidelines." I nodded, remembering the 75-page PDF they'd emailed. "I have." She gave a tight smile. "Good. We strive for excellence here. You'll find we don't tolerate unapproved paint colors, ornamental flags, or yard decor that disrupts uniformity. And I hope you haven't neglected to register any pets." "No pets, just me," I replied. Her eyes glinted. "Good. Then you'll find yourself on my good side, so long as you abide by all the regulations. Remember, the HOA Clubhouse is for official HOA events only. We'll let you know if you're needed for volunteer tasks." With that, she pivoted on her heel and strode away. I exhaled, relieved the encounter was over. I'd dealt with overzealous HOA types before, but Karen's intensity suggested this might be a whole different level. Despite that frosty introduction, the rest of the community seemed pleasant enough. Over the next few weeks, I met neighbors who brought homemade cookies, invited me to barbecues, and apologized for Karen's extreme approach. It was during one such chat, with an older couple named Margaret and Henry Lawson, that I first heard a rumor about the weekly gatherings at the HOA Clubhouse. "Just be careful, Nick," Henry cautioned. "There are hush-hush events that happen there late in the evenings. Karen says it's a private HOA-sponsored game night, but we suspect it's more than that. Lots of cars rolling in after midnight, strangers from out of town, that sort of thing." Margaret nodded. "I even heard from someone that they lost quite a bit of money in those gatherings. Illegal gambling, maybe. But Karen's got her inner circle sworn to secrecy. She uses intimidation to keep everyone quiet. Given my professional background, this immediately raised red flags. Operating an unlicensed gambling ring is a major offense in our state, punishable by large fines and potential prison time, especially if it preys on vulnerable populations. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions just yet. "Thanks for the heads up," I told them. "I'll keep an eye out." As the Chief of State Gaming Enforcement, I'm used to dealing with large-scale casinos, underground betting parlors, or organized crime rings. The idea of an HOA building hosting an illicit casino sounded almost comical. But the more I heard, the more plausible it seemed. Karen's controlling nature, the secrecy of her gatherings, the late-night car traffic, it all fit a pattern of an illegal gaming operation. I decided to gather more intel before making any official moves. If these rumors were true, we'd need solid evidence for a sting. A few days later, I approached Karen at a routine HOA meeting, using my new resident status to feign curiosity. "Ms. Arledge," I said politely, "I'm interested in volunteering at the clubhouse events. Maybe help set up chairs or refreshments, get to know everyone." She eyed me suspiciously. "That's thoughtful. We're quite particular about who assists with official gatherings. There's a weekly social hour for older residents, cards, bingo, that kind of thing. But it's usually overseen by board members." I forced a casual laugh. "Understood. Just thought I'd offer. Let me know if anything comes up." She nodded vaguely, then moved on to scold someone about an unapproved mailbox color. But the next evening, I decided to take a quiet walk past the clubhouse to see what I might observe. Around 9 o'clock, the building was dark. But near midnight, cars began arriving, some with out-of-county plates. I watched from behind a row of hedges, heart thudding. Groups of middle-aged adults, a few seniors, and even some younger folks slipped inside. A faint glow leaked from the curtained windows. I couldn't hear much, but every so often, the door would crack open, letting out a burst of chatter punctuated by the distinct clatter of chips. Poker chips? That was my guess, though I couldn't be certain from the street. My suspicion skyrocketed. This was no ordinary HOA card night. The crowd's hush-hush demeanor suggested high-stakes games, possibly with Karen at the helm. If so, we were dealing with a serious violation of state gambling laws, especially if she took a cut of the proceeds, which is typical for illicit casinos. A few nights later, I found myself chatting with a neighbor named Ron Henderson, a retired Marine who lived 2 doors down. Over a beer on his front porch, Ron confided that he'd visited the clubhouse games once, lured by a friend who claimed it was a harmless, friendly poker circle. "It was anything but harmless," Ron grimaced. "I walked in and saw professional poker tables, slot machines rigged to a laptop, even a makeshift roulette wheel. Felt like stepping into a mini casino." Karen introduced me to this hush-hush membership fee nonsense. "They charged me $100 just to sit down at a table." His voice lowered. I didn't have that kind of money to burn. Worse, I noticed a few older vets from the local VFW hall. They seemed in too deep, owing hundreds, if not thousands. "It's a predatory setup. Karen calls it her private club, but it's basically a scam." My jaw tensed. This was exactly the type of unethical operation my agency existed to combat. Illegal gambling that preys on the elderly or vulnerable groups is particularly heinous. No way was I letting it continue. Still, I needed more than anecdotes. As an enforcement official, I couldn't risk tipping Karen off by raiding the clubhouse prematurely. These were extremely tight-knit, secret events. I'd need a proper sting operation with undercover agents, hidden cameras, financial tracing, the works. I thanked Ron for trusting me with his story and reassured him that if it was truly illegal, justice would be served. He looked relieved, though uncertain. After all, Karen wielded immense local power. Crossing her often led to petty retaliations like ridiculous HOA fines or social ostracism. To gather more concrete evidence, I reached out to a close friend in the local sheriff's department, Detective Alicia Gomez. I briefed her on the rumors, clarifying that I didn't yet have enough for a formal complaint, but that I suspected an unlicensed casino was operating from the HOA Clubhouse. Alicia was shocked. "That's a first for me. An HOA Clubhouse turned underground casino? We'll do some quiet background checks, see if we can trace suspicious financial flows or large cash withdrawals among your neighbors." While Alicia handled the law enforcement angle, I discreetly looped in 2 of my state gaming enforcement colleagues, Carl Wu, an expert in illegal slot machine operations, and Samantha Hill, a financial forensic analyst. We decided to do some preliminary legwork. Surveillance. We drive through the neighborhood during game nights to photograph license plates. Financial. Samantha would check for any pattern of large bank deposits or suspicious transactions linked to Karen or her close associates. Possible undercover. If we found a safe way, we'd try to slip an agent into the clubhouse as a gambler. Within a week, Samantha reported an interesting find. Karen's personal bank account showed modest, normal transactions, but she held an LLC under a different name that had frequent large cash deposits, sometimes thousands of dollars deposited at once. This strongly indicated income from an illegal source, consistent with a gambling ring. Meanwhile, Carl identified a handful of plate numbers from out of the area, linked to individuals known to frequent illegal card dens. All signs pointed to a thriving, covert casino under Karen's direction. The pieces were aligning. The next step was to infiltrate. We orchestrated a plan with Detective Gomez, an undercover officer named James Clark, who had experience posing as a gambler, would attempt to gain entry into Karen's clubhouse. I'd discreetly introduce him at an HOA function as a friend staying with me temporarily. That chance came when the HOA hosted a weekend barbecue in the neighborhood park, officially a meet-and-greet event. Karen, of course, was there, presiding over the festivities in her pastel blazer, barking orders at volunteers. I approached her, feigning politeness. "Ms. Arledge, I want you to meet James. He's an old friend visiting for a few weeks. I thought it'd be nice if he saw how friendly Chestnut Villas can be." James, dressed casually, gave a warm smile. "Pleasure to meet you. Nicholas here says this is a lovely community." Karen measured him with cool eyes. "Yes, we pride ourselves on order. I hope you won't be violating any rules, Mr. Clark." He laughed. "I'm pretty easygoing. Actually, I'm a big card game enthusiast. My last neighborhood had a weekly poker night that I missed terribly." Karen's eyes flickered, just a hint of interest. She glanced around before replying in a hushed tone. "We have a small private card club here, though it's not for everyone. If you're serious about playing, perhaps we can discuss it." James gave a nonchalant shrug, as if trying to hide excitement. "Absolutely. Let me know if an invitation comes up." I watched her reaction carefully. She was intrigued but still wary, typical of someone protecting a secret racket. She nodded curtly. "We'll see. Enjoy the barbecue." Later, James whispered to me, "She's definitely scoping me out. I bet I'll get an invite soon, or at least a chance to attend. She's playing it close to the vest." I agreed. The stage was set. Once James attended a game, we'd be able to gather critical, first-hand evidence. Sure enough, 2 days after the barbecue, James received a text message from an unknown number. "Karen here. If you're still interested in cards, come to the HOA Clubhouse Wed Night. 11 p.m. Bring $500 min to buy in. Tell no one. Door code 6392. That was the break we needed. James coordinated with me and Detective Gomez to set up an undercover operation. We'd outfit James with a tiny microphone hidden in a belt buckle and a small camera lens disguised as a shirt button. Agents would be stationed nearby in unmarked vehicles, ready to intervene if anything went south. On Wednesday night, I waited at home, heart pounding with tension, while James headed to the clubhouse. He entered at 11:05 p.m. Through the hidden microphone feed, we heard subdued chatter, the shuffling of cards, and beeping from some sort of electronic slot machine. Karen's voice cut through the din. "New face tonight, folks. This is James. He's here by my invitation, so treat him well." "James, the house rules are simple. Buy-in is $500. House takes a 10% rake from each pot. Slots and roulette are in the back room, also house run. We don't tolerate cheating or blabbing." "Understood." James feigned a laugh. "Got it. Let's play." For the next few hours, he mingled among the gamblers, capturing damning evidence on video. Slot machines lined against a wall, hooked up to questionable software. Roulette table with a wheel that looked rigged. Poker tables with professional layouts. Keno boards, ready for quick picks. At one point, James lost a hand and reached for more chips. The microphone picked up Karen's instructions. "We can arrange credit if you're short on cash. Just 15% interest, pay within a week. Don't cross me, though." That was a direct depiction of loan sharking, another severe offense. The entire operation was more elaborate than we'd dared suspect. Karen wasn't just running a friendly poker night. She'd established a mini casino within the HOA Clubhouse, complete with a loan shark element, house rake, and multiple illegal gambling stations. The worst revelation came when James recognized several elderly residents from the neighborhood among the players, some visibly distressed. They whispered about having lost substantial sums. Others, possibly from outside the neighborhood, included older veterans enticed by the promise of easy winnings. At one point, James engaged an older gentleman in conversation. The man, trembling, admitted he was $2,000 in the hole and scared of missing his next mortgage payment. Karen had apparently convinced him to put up his Social Security check as collateral. Hearing that broke my heart, even over the microphone feed. This was exploitation, pure and simple. People on fixed incomes were lured into a rigged environment where the house always won. James played conservatively, capturing everything on camera. By 2 a.m., he'd seen enough. He excused himself, cashing out minimal losses, promising to return. Through the mic, we heard Karen's parting words. Next time, bring more money if you want to make real winnings. And remember, this is our secret. The moment James stepped outside, he texted me. Got it all. Operation is big. Next steps. I replied, meet me at the safe house. We'll debrief with Detective Gomez. The evidence we now possessed, loan sharking, unlicensed gambling, rigged machines, was more than enough to justify a raid. But we also needed to time it carefully, ensuring we caught Karen and her accomplices in the act, with money changing hands. Over the next few days, Detective Gomez, my colleagues from State Gaming Enforcement, and a small group from the Sheriff's Department crafted an airtight plan. We needed to catch Karen red-handed, operating the casino with multiple witnesses. Undercover return. James would attend another game night to confirm the operation was ongoing and to identify all key players, any dealers, security personnel, or co-organizers. Coordinated raid. Once we confirmed the night was in full swing, gaming enforcement agents, local police, and possibly state troopers would converge. Seizure of evidence. We'd confiscate all gambling paraphernalia, computers running the slot software, and financial ledgers. During this preparation, we uncovered more unsettling details. Karen had structured her operation through multiple shell bank accounts to launder her gambling profits. Some unsuspecting HOA dues were being funneled into clubhouse renovations, which actually went toward purchasing gambling equipment. She used intimidation tactics, threatening hefty HOA fines, legal action, social isolation, to ensure no neighbor snitched. It was a spider's web of manipulation, greed, and malice, all hidden behind the facade of an HOA manager fussing over lawn colors. With each new revelation, my resolve hardened. Karen's exploitation of seniors and veterans disgusted me on a personal and professional level. It was time to bring the full force of the law down on her operation. We set the raid for a Friday night, prime gambling time. James arranged to attend a special high-stakes session, having boasted he'd come flush with cash. Meanwhile, a team of law enforcement vehicles waited a few blocks away, poised to strike. By 10:30 p.m., James was inside. Through his hidden mic, we heard the clamor of slot machine bells, the clicking of roulette, the ruffling of poker chips. Karen moved around the room, collecting her rake, reminding players of the house rules. At 11:15 p.m., Detective Gomez radioed the units. All teams, moved to staging positions. Unmarked vans and cruisers quietly converged on the street near the clubhouse. My heart thundered. This was the final step of a carefully built case. At 11:30 p.m., we got the signal from James. They're in full operation. We have over 20 players, multiple dealers, and Karen overseeing everything. Detective Gomez gave the order, go. A convoy of vehicles swept into the parking lot, lights off to maintain an element of surprise. Uniformed deputies hopped out, weapons holstered but ready, while my enforcement agents followed. We positioned ourselves at each entrance and exit to prevent escapes. One deputy announced via bullhorn, "This is the county sheriff's department and state gaming enforcement. The building is surrounded. Shut off all machines, place your hands where we can see them, and exit calmly." Pandemonium broke out inside. Through the windows, we saw players scrambling, chips flying. Some tried to dash for side doors, only to find law enforcement blocking the way. The door to the clubhouse burst open, revealing Karen with a wild, panicked expression. "What is this?" she shrieked, eyes darting. "You have no right to storm an HOA facility. This is private property." I stepped forward, my badge visible. "Ms. Arledge, I'm Nicholas White, Chief of State Gaming Enforcement, and also your neighbor. We have a warrant to search this property. We know about your illegal casino operation." Her face twisted in outrage, then fear. She tried to slam the door, but officers swiftly restrained her. Inside, we found the gambling tables in chaos, cards strewn across the floor, slot machines still flashing. Several seniors looked stunned, a few on the verge of tears. An officer read Karen her rights while she sputtered indignantly. You set me up? You're not just some homeowner." I folded my arms. "You exploited your neighbors, Ms. Arledge. That ends now. As the raid proceeded, law enforcement methodically cataloged the evidence. Multiple professional-grade poker tables, at least 10 slot machines wired to laptops with questionable software, a rigged roulette wheel, records of loans offered to players at predatory interest rates, ledgers detailing large sums of money passing through Karen's shell accounts. Karen's inner circle of enforcers, middle-aged men in suits, were detained, presumably security hired to keep gamblers in line. Some of them insisted they were just volunteers, but the presence of a cashier's cage and sign-out sheets told a different story. Meanwhile, paramedics were called to check on an elderly man who seemed to be in distress, worried he'd lost his monthly pension at the tables. Karen glared at me from where she was handcuffed, but said nothing. I approached her calmly. "We have records of everything, Ms. Arlich. Cash deposits, guest lists, the rake you charged, the loan sharking. You targeted veterans and older residents, lying to them that they could win big." She sneered. "I provided a service. These people wanted to gamble. If they can't handle the risk, that's their problem." My jaw clenched. "You ran an unlicensed casino on HOA property that belongs to the entire community. You stole funds, broke the law, and destroyed lives along the way. It's over." She tried to protest more, but an officer led her away, reciting the charges she'd face. I felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that she'd no longer victimize unsuspecting residents. Anger at how brazen and cruel she'd been. Word of the bust spread through Chestnut Villas like wildfire. By dawn, every neighbor seemed to know that Karen had been arrested, her illicit casino dismantled. Local news crews rolled in, capturing images of law enforcement carrying slot machines and boxes of poker chips from the modest clubhouse. Many residents were stunned. Some had suspected shady activities, but never fathomed the extent. Others felt vindicated. They'd sensed Karen's tyrannical rule concealed deeper wrongdoing. The newly formed, interim HOA board quickly convened an emergency meeting. They apologized to neighbors, promising full transparency. They vowed to thoroughly audit HOA finances to see if Karen had embezzled community dues for her casino. A wave of relief and anger washed over the neighborhood. People realized how deeply manipulated they'd been, especially those threatened with fines or blacklisted from community events if they dared question the late-night gatherings. The cruelty and greed behind Karen's operation infuriated them. As for me, I quietly submitted my official report to the State Gaming Commission, summarizing the sting. The commission expressed gratitude for my initiative, though ironically, they never expected a chief enforcement officer to uncover such a ring in his own suburban HOA. Karen's legal journey began with a sensational arraignment. The charges leveled against her included unlicensed gambling, a felony in our jurisdiction, loan sharking, predatory lending, money laundering through shell accounts, and fraud for misusing HOA funds and forging certain permits. Her attorney tried to spin the story that Karen was running a private gaming club, not a public casino. But the extensive evidence, plus eyewitness statements, ledgers, and the undercover footage, made that defense weak. Meanwhile, a group of elderly neighbors and veterans came forward, detailing how they were pressured or enticed into gambling. Some had lost significant sums. Others faced harassment from Karen's collectors if they missed payments. One older woman tearfully recounted how she used her granddaughter's college savings to repay Karen's interest-heavy loan. It was a gut-wrenching display of the human cost of Karen's scheme. The court showed no sympathy for her claims that she'd provided entertainment. Under mounting evidence, Karen's attorney sought a plea deal, but the district attorney aimed for a strong precedent. They refused any arrangement that didn't include major jail time. As part of the investigations, the state seized Karen's assets. Her home, purchased long ago at a modest price, had been heavily upgraded using illicit casino profits. The bank accounts tied to her LLC were frozen. The HOA took civil action to recover funds that she'd siphoned off. A judge authorized the confiscation of her property, the house, the contraband gambling equipment, and any luxury items traced to the illegal earnings. Karen fought tooth and nail, claiming she'd earned it all legally. But financial forensics were airtight. Her legitimate income was nowhere near enough to justify her lavish spending or large bank deposits. By the time the seizure concluded, Karen was left with almost nothing. The mansion-like home she'd flaunted within the neighborhood was slated for auction, proceeds going toward reimbursing her victims, clearing HOA debts, and funding the law enforcement operation that brought her down. The final blow to her pride came when the local sheriff's department posted a public notice on the property. Neighbors watched as all traces of Karen's once imposing rule vanished under the glare of legal consequences. Finally, Karen stood trial. It was a media spectacle, with reporters camped outside the courthouse. The prosecution laid out a devastating case. Undercover footage, James Clark's videos showing Karen in the clubhouse, collecting rakes from poker pots, directing slot machine payouts. Financial records, Samantha Hill's analysis proving money laundering and misappropriation of HOA fees. Testimonies, veterans and seniors explaining how Karen lured them into debt with false promises. I testified about my role as a neighbor who overheard rumors, carefully investigating under my capacity as the state gaming enforcement chief. The defense tried to paint me as an overreaching official who entrapped a well-meaning HOA leader. But the overwhelming evidence of a well-organized casino made those claims ring hollow. When Karen took the stand, she railed against the notion that she was a criminal mastermind, insisting she was just helping neighbors enjoy some games. The prosecutor countered by showing her own messages demanding higher fees and threatening defaulters. By the trial's end, the jury needed little deliberation. They found Karen guilty on all major counts: unlicensed gambling, predatory lending, fraud, and money laundering. The judge spared no sympathy, calling her scheme a betrayal of her community and a predatory exploitation of vulnerable citizens. At sentencing, Karen appeared stoic but shaken. The judge delivered a harsh penalty, citing the harm to elderly residents and veterans as an aggravating factor. She received several years in state prison, plus massive fines beyond the property confiscation. As the bailiffs led her away in handcuffs, Karen glanced around, seemingly still in disbelief. The downfall of the once dominant HOA figure was complete. Meanwhile, her property was auctioned off. The new HOA board eagerly awaited the finalization of the sale, hoping to use some proceeds to revitalize the community, repay those who'd been scammed, and restore trust in the association's leadership. For the neighbors, the sentencing provided a sense of closure. They knew that never again would they fear retaliation from an overbearing Karen who weaponized HOA rules or used the community clubhouse as a secret gambling den. In the months that followed Karen's conviction, Chestnut Villas evolved. Freed from her tyrannical oversight, the HOA restructured. They held open forums, inviting residents to voice opinions on how to manage the clubhouse legitimately, perhaps renting it out for family celebrations or hosting genuine community game nights, free from any shady dealings. At one meeting, an elderly neighbor suggested a low-stakes bingo night, proceeds going to local charities supporting veterans. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and for the first time, the residents felt excited about building genuine camaraderie. I continued living in the neighborhood, now no longer undercover but openly recognized as the official who exposed Karen's operation. Neighbors often thanked me, though I insisted the entire law enforcement team deserved credit. The brightening atmosphere was tangible. People threw block parties without fear of punitive HOA citations. The sense of relief was profound, like the neighborhood had awakened from a lingering nightmare. Despite the victory, I couldn't forget the stories of seniors who lost significant portions of their life savings. While Karen's confiscated assets helped repay some, financial and emotional scars remained. Working with local nonprofits, I initiated a small community fundraiser that matched donations toward these neighbors' debts. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it provided a bit of financial cushion. The sense of communal support helped mend the trust so deeply fractured by Karen's deception. Every so often, I'd encounter one of the older residents who'd fallen prey to Karen's schemes. They'd shake my hand, tear up, and say something like, "I was too embarrassed to tell anyone I got into debt. Thank you for shining light on this." I realized then, more clearly than ever, the profound duty behind my job. Gaming regulation isn't merely about collecting license fees or ensuring fair play at big casinos. It's about protecting the vulnerable and upholding integrity within our communities. As the seasons changed, Chestnut Villas found itself thriving. The negative media attention from the gambling bust faded, replaced by stories about a community bouncing back. The newly installed HOA president, a kind retiree named Patricia Rogers, promoted transparency and neighborly cooperation. The clubhouse was renovated for legitimate uses: yoga classes, potluck dinners, arts and crafts fairs. No longer did it serve as a den of secrecy. People rediscovered the simple joy of communal gatherings without an undercurrent of exploitation. While the memory of Karen's reign lingered, it became a cautionary tale, reminding everyone that authority unchecked can breed corruption. Over time, the neighborhood forged stronger bonds, committed to never letting fear or manipulation hold sway again. Eventually, the day came when I strolled down the neatly lined streets of Chestnut Villas, observing the transformations. The house that once belonged to Karen lay empty and foreclosed, soon to be occupied by a family unaware of its dramatic history. The sign out front read, "Sold, under new management." Reflecting on the entire saga, I felt a sense of closure and quiet pride. As the chief of state gaming enforcement, I'd always known corruption could surface in unexpected places: rural barns, abandoned warehouses, even hidden rooms in upscale mansions. But in HOA Clubhouse, that was a new one. Karen, now serving time, had lost everything: her standing, her property, and the facade of power she clung to. The community she once terrorized moved forward without her, forging a healthier, more transparent environment. Sometimes, neighbors still teased me for being this secret watchdog living next door. I'd laugh it off, saying I was just doing my job. Yet in truth, I cherished seeing how my professional expertise, combined with local law enforcement and the bravery of neighbors who spoke up, saved vulnerable people from exploitation. On a sunny weekend afternoon, the newly organized Chestnut Villas HOA hosted a grand reopening of the clubhouse. A small ceremony commemorated the building's return to legitimate community use. They invited me to cut the ribbon, acknowledging my role in freeing the space from Karen's illicit grip. Standing there, scissors in hand, I saw the smiling faces of residents, families, seniors, veterans, children. Instead of slot machines and rigged roulette wheels, the main hall was filled with baked goods, lemonade stands, and kids running around in laughter. The sense of renewal was palpable, and I felt deeply grateful for it. This was what a community was supposed to be. And Karen's downfall, severe as it was, became a powerful reminder that no matter how devious or well-connected someone might be, justice and integrity can, and should, prevail.